So today we're talking about human development. Information for this one comes from the PRIDE course, which is the Ontario government's course that you need to take in order to adopt within the province. This was from AdoptTalk, which was the adoption agency's course that they gave, which was, I believe, a 3-day course. Just specific to international adoption, using them and adopting from India. Anyways, so for human development, the beginning. Obviously, we're all humans. We all develop into the adults that we are. And our old school thinking, the sort of ideology when we grew up around that time was that kids didn't remember anything until they were like an adult or a functioning human being. So someone that could walk, talk, communicate with you and reiterate back to you their experiences. It was kind of as though those experiences before that didn't even count in our little lives. But of course they do, because everything counts with us from the point of conception, actually. So even things that can happen to our parents while we're in the womb can fundamentally affect how we develop later on. So if our mom is scared a lot while she's pregnant, then we can have, that can affect our attachment style and the type of little human that we turn out to be, depending on our initial life experiences. So it's pretty interesting. And now they're starting to prove that not only is it genetics, but there's also environmental factors that play into the type of people that we turn into. And so our genetic makeup brings us to a certain point, and then our environment when we're tiny people, whether we're nurtured or shamed, whether we have all of our needs met, things like that, will turn on or off different genetic imprints, and that will determine a lot of things about us, including our personalities and our health. So jumping right into it. When it comes to the PRIDE course, they look at our role as a parent as a job. We're signing up for this, we know what we're getting into, and so they want to make sure that we're going to do a good job. And so they break it down to 6 categories of competency. We are to protect and nurture our children. We are to meet their developmental needs, which means that we have to be attuned to them. We have to be able to actually see them, witness where they're at developmentally, not just by their age. And then we need to address any delays that we might see. We need to support relationships between our children and connections to their home country and any family or caregivers that we might know of or that we might find later on. We want to connect them to safe and nurturing relationships that they can have for their lifetime. That was a big one for me because obviously I don't have very many lifetime relationships. And so I definitely recognize the importance of those and the missing piece when you don't have those. And so part of our job is to actually, make sure that not only with ourselves, because at some point we won't be here anymore, but that we're setting them up to actually have lifelong relationships for themselves so they have that community. We want to work as a member of a professional team. So that is what they use in the PRIDE course. That's not the language I really like. I get what they're getting at. It is a professional team. They're talking about not only the parents, but in their case, especially if it's a child being adopted through Children's Aid Society, then there will be a social worker, there'll be other people coming into play with that. But they also mean doctors, therapists, and anyone else that has a close relationship with the children, really, and that would be influencing them. And so I get at the team aspect, and so I will either say support team or probably just team, but basically it's just the adults in your kid's life that are helping them along. And then finally, to reinforce your child's cultural heritage and identity, which we talk about and recognize in our household. And so regardless of where your child is coming from, just that you are supporting that and talking actively and positively about that. And that adoption is about what the family can provide for the children and not the other way around. So a lot of people go into it saying that they want a specific type of child, and unfortunately that's not how it works. Just like when you have your birth child, you don't know what the little human at the end is going to be like, and that's same with adoption. You're choosing, you're saying that you have a family that can provide a home for these children. And so we just need to remember that it's that way. And in fact, that is so important to remember that I enjoyed hearing it a different way. And so that is just that this process, it's not about us. It's not about you. It is about the smoothest transition possible for our kids. And so we want to make sure that their needs are met, period. And of course, we want to make sure our own needs are met, but the priority in this is ensuring that our kids' needs are met. So breaking it down, the team's role is to provide the children a chance to grow up with basic rights. And what they count as basic rights are really basic, to be protected against neglect, cruelty, abuse, and exploitation, to have safe housing, healthcare, and an education that prepares them for the future, to be a unique person whose individuality is protected from violation. That's an important one, and I think that it is glossed over far too much in other countries that are very close to ours. To prepare for the responsibilities of parenthood and family life, to maintain relationships with people important to them, and they have the right to a stable family, to safe and nurturing relationships that last their lifetime. So it's important for us to remind them of that not only are we safe, that we're here and we will be here for their lifetime. It's super important to establish permanence. So this includes a strong sense of stability, predictability, and identity. It must include lifelong connections, like we've talked about, which are long-term and ongoing relationships. They provide a sense of belonging and community, including cultural. So if your child is not the same cultural heritage of your own, to make sure that you are providing that for them as well. Continuity is things like albums, heirlooms, family stories, life books, and cultural heritage. It links the past, present, and future, and promotes positive cultural identity. So all of that is important. And another noteworthy thing here, when we talk about protecting our children against exploitation, a big piece of that is their privacy. So again, just because they're children, it doesn't mean that it's not their story. It's not our story as their parents that we ultimately get permission to share. These are their life events, their health history, and so it is up to them if they choose to share that at some point when they are old enough to decide. So really, we want to try and really respect that privacy as much as possible and not share unnecessary bits of information with anyone. And that goes down to, how were they surrendered? Any question that your family has decided that is outside of the boundaries of acceptable questions, or if you're put on the spot and you're unsure or you're not feeling comfortable, then it's okay to not answer questions, and we need to get okay with that for our kids' sake, because we're going to need to teach them how to answer uncomfortable questions too, or walk away from them. All right, so the biggie is attachment. So naturally, our kids are coming to us later, and whether that is at 2 years old or 7 years old or who knows how many years old, they have had a little history before, and we don't know whether they've been able to successfully attach to anyone in their past or not. And as much as being attached to someone before will mean that they will have lost someone, that really is the hopeful situation. We want them to have loved and to have known love and to have had those needs met, even if there needed to be a shift away from that. Because obviously they're in the state of needing to be adopted for a reason, and that reason is never going to be a happy story. It just can't be. And so ultimately, being attached at some point is better than not having attached, and having perhaps, been in an orphanage setting where they weren't having their needs met, for a longer period of time. We don't know our kids' stories, and we won't know them until we're matched and until they're home, but just to have that understanding and that grace for them. Our big goal in adoption is to ensure our kid has the optimal environment to attach to us and us to attach to them. It is a reciprocal relationship. I'm far less concerned with that part because most of us are just anxiously awaiting that moment. And although many of us may suffer from post-adoption depression, that is something to keep in mind. Attachment, it's less of a concern for the parents. And so I'm going to focus on the kids here. So we want to attune to where our children are and meet them there right away. Just pay attention, put your phone down, look at them, watch what they're doing, watch what their behaviors are, and just meet them where they're at. Notice what brings them joy and do that, as long as it's safe. The quicker that you can do that's how they learn to trust you. That's how they learn to trust that you see them and that you're going to meet their needs and you're going to meet them where they're at. Our kids will also have the barrier of language, and so that is a piece of the puzzle. We won't just be able to say words to them and them understand necessarily. And so we will need to find other ways to express that. And so that we'll need to be even more engaged with eye contact and touch or expression to show what we need. But once they do understand, saying something as simple as, I can see that you're feeling angry or hurt or sad, and I'm here with you. And, that's it. That's it. You don't need to make it better. You don't need to change it. You don't need to try and make them happy. In fact, that's not good. So just to be there with them, like, what do you need right now? So going back to attachment, keeping something from the orphanage if possible. So we're going to try and keep something from there, whether it's that might be tricky. They might not let us, but if we can keep something from the orphanage, we will. Otherwise, we'll take lots of photos. We'll have those. We'll take something tangible from the country. So we'll have stuff. Human development is determined by both genetic and environmental factors, like I was saying before. So this means that it's not only the genes that we inherit from our parents, but it's also the type of nurturing or neglectful environment that we're raised in and that our cells are exposed to early on. The Pride course outlines 5 developmental areas: physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, and sexual. Children require loving, caring attention if they are to develop into adults who have trusting and secure relationships with other people. Development of personality, intelligence, and social behavior occurs most rapidly in the first 3 to 4 years of life. For internationally adopted kids, this may be delayed due to the lack of social experiences and engagement in those first years. Having one's basic needs around food, shelter, and emotional needs, like sufficient attention, are required to avoid developmental delays. You need the nutrition in order to have brain development and body growth and feel safe in your environment. In order to physically grow, you need to have back and forth interactions with a caring caregiver on a regular basis in order for your brain to develop and grow. And so sometimes our internationally adopted kiddos miss out on a bit of that, and their development may take place a little bit at an older age, and that's okay. How attachment develops seems fairly simple, although it's not often met in our Western society. The child expresses a need, like being dirty or hungry, and the adult meets the need in a timely manner with warmth, affection, support, and patience. The child relaxes until the next need. This ensures that trust is built and the child feels worthy of having their needs met. The child feels worthy of having their needs met. They were able to say, like, scream, I have a dirty diaper. Someone comes right away. They lovingly change you with no problem, no grief, no, why do you have to poop your pants? No, nothing, just loving, attentive care. And then the child understands, hey, doesn't matter. I have someone here to meet my needs. I'm worthy of that. Like inherently in their brains early, I'm just worthy of having my needs met. And that's so important. The hope is that by 18 months, our child has attached to at least one adult. This does not need to be a biological parent. It may be an attentive caregiver. Some orphanages or family homes have great caregivers where they do attach to those caregivers. Although this may cause grief in the child upon the separation, it is actually better for their developmental health, like I was saying before. Again, attachment is a positive interactive cycle between the parent or an attentive adult and the child. It doesn't start with a need, although it can. The caregiver has an opportunity to enforce these positive interactions before the need is even expressed. If you are attuned enough to your child to know, oh, Johnny's always hungry at 2 p.m. and you have a snack there and ready at 2 p.m. before they even have to express that hunger, well, then they learn they can trust you on even a deeper level because you see them. You really see them. All right, so becoming an excellent interpreter of your child's behaviors as signs is important so that you can respond immediately to those needs. Now, many of our children will have some developmental delays due to their early life experiences, naturally. We need to be aware of this and be prepared to love them through it and to continue to educate ourselves on how best to support them because we might not know. We likely may run into circumstances where we don't necessarily know what to do. We're going to do our best and then we're going to figure it out. But it's up to us to do that figuring out, to support them, to love them, and then to walk away and go and figure it out. Developmental challenges can come from genetics, prenatal care, or from their upbringing so far in life. There are all sorts of factors leading to developmental delays in children. Here I'll focus on the most important ones, or the ones most likely in international adoption. There may be genetic conditions, known or unknown at the time of adoption. Of course, there's only limited information that we are privy to beforehand. There may be prenatal factors such as poor nutrition, there may be child abuse or neglect, accidents, trauma, exposure to domestic violence, and there will certainly be environmental factors such as living in an impoverished place and an orphanage. They will have been institutionalized in some capacity for a portion of their lives. We know that. And sometimes these foreign state-operated orphanages where they live may be deprived of attachment opportunities, adequate medical care, and proper stimulation and nutrition. So these are just things that we know and that we need to keep in mind when our kiddos come home to us so that we have a bit more grace with them. Developmental delays may also come into play with parenting that is high controlling and not flexible. Or if caregivers have mental illness. So these are things that we see often in our Western society and with kids in foster care also. When it comes to the impacts of this maltreatment and trauma, there's a continuum of attachment in children and in humans, ranging from the unattached all the way to the healthy, secure, attached person. So just to run through those so you can see what those attachment styles look like, and you'll be able to figure out what attachment style you have, as well as hopefully figure that out for your child as they come home and help them move into a healthier, secure state of attachment. An unattached human is really rare, but they are someone who just was unable to form an attachment to any humans along the way, even a fragile one. This can occur where children are extremely neglected and have received institutional care or sensory deprivation. It is rare. Next is an anxious attachment. This is a form of insecure attachment marked by a deep fear of abandonment. These kiddos have experienced some attachment, but they're preoccupied with not being left alone and ensuring that their needs are met. Anxious attachment is associated with neediness or clingy behavior. They may have been left alone a lot. They may have experienced multiple separations or periods of time where their needs just were not met. Next is the avoidant attachment style. It's a form of insecure attachment marked by a fear of intimacy. They tend to have trouble getting close to others or trusting and would like to maintain distance and remain emotionally unavailable. They like to rely on themselves. maybe not sharing, not being close. And then there's the disorganized or fearful avoidant attachment style, and that's a combination of the previous two, so the anxious and the avoidant. These kiddos don't appear to know how to get their needs met. They may look and act out of control and have difficulty regulating their emotions or being able to express what they need. They want closeness, and they learned at a young age that the best strategy for being in a relationship is to hide your feelings. So they want closeness, but they push it away. They may display avoidant behaviors while at times expressing their needs. They may display a sense of self-sufficiency, but still need to be protected and nurtured. Often the avoidant style is the most praised style because they may look like they're being more capable than their age, like they're managing themselves well, but really it's because they're keeping things at arm's length. And finally, a healthy or secure attachment. So that's the goal. Most children are able to develop some type of attachment to their parents, even when they've been abused or neglected. So don't lose hope. That's the whole point of this, is that we can attach to our children, and we just need to put in that effort to make sure that we do that. Sometimes instead of being happy and relieved, children in care will be very angry when entering a new home, even if it is safe and nurturing. With secure, safe, loving, attuned care, children are very capable of healing and of moving through their scary feelings. And that's what we are here to help them with. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be scared. This is how you work that out so that you can move on to the good stuff. So that's the good news. Nurturing families can help children overcome and learn to manage their developmental issues. Now, when it comes to a little bit of trauma awareness, neglect often leads children to believe that it is their fault, not their parents or their caretakers. So we need to keep that in mind. Our kids may be coming to us believing that they already have fault. Because even when those relationships are painful, they are familiar to them. And so they rely on them. Emotional maltreatment may affect a child's ability and willingness to form attachments. They may believe that they are stupid, ugly, bad, or unworthy of positive attention or genuine affection. Neglect and emotional maltreatment may cause the child to have behaviors that challenge attachment, fight or flight, not making eye contact, crying, raging, destructive behaviors. It is also likely to lead to developmental delays depending on the age of the child when the neglect occurred. In general, challenging life experiences can alter a child's development. It makes sense. Depending on when that challenging life experience occurred will depend on where the development was at and where they may have been stunted a little bit. As their parent, it is our primary job to understand what our children's developmental stages are and then to meet them there. This may mean regressing to activities that would seem babyish for a child of that age. It likely will mean that for our kids. It will likely look like wearing a 4-year-old child as though they're 1, swaddling and holding a 6-year-old like they're a baby. Allowing this regression ensures that the child will have those developmental milestones met so that they can move forward to the next. If they were never able to be swaddled and held like a baby and rocked and lovingly cooed to, their brain didn't get that soothing attachment with their parent, and so they still are worthy of that. And so it's okay to do things that seem like it's too young for that child so that they can move on to that next stage. We need to go backwards and let them know that we are there, that they can rely on us, that they can have that closeness and that skin contact, and then move on. Now, again, if your kid's a little bit older and skin contact makes them uncomfortable, we don't do anything that makes them uncomfortable. So this is all following their lead, what makes them feel safe and secure and has their needs met. All right, so every child in care has experienced abuse or neglect. That's just the way that it is. They're in care for a reason. In international orphanages, this tends to look more like neglect, as the kids far outweigh the number of caretakers available to them. This does not mean that the people are not necessarily doing their best or not loving the kids. There's just only so many of them. It's just a reality of the current situation in many orphanage settings. The children tend to be small, lacking movement from their confined spaces. Without continual attentive care, their tiny systems barely long for or absorb the nutrients from the limited food consumed. Kids need that attentive care in order for their body to actually open up and properly take in nutrients from the food that they eat. It's very interesting. And so they need to feel safe and loved. Childhood trauma is an exceptional experience in which powerful and dangerous stimuli overwhelm the child's capacity to regulate their own emotions. This can change their behavior and cause intense distress, difficulty sleeping, difficulty paying attention, anger, withdrawal, or repeated and intrusive thoughts. Some children may even develop psychiatric or behavioral disorders from their childhood trauma. It impacts us greatly. Abuse, neglect, and trauma have an actual impact on the brain and its functioning. This can be improved, but we need to know the child and their specific developmental needs in order to meet them. There are a variety of ways that neglect can affect a child's development. Children who are left alone cannot model or mimic skills such as language, and they may not receive the help needed to learn them. Children who are not supervised might hurt themselves and as a result learn not to take risks. This can delay development. Children in a deprived environment may not receive the needed stimulation required for basic development. Basic needs must be met before a child can focus on developmental tasks. They need to know that they are safe, that they have food and water, and they can sleep before they can learn how to think. Food safety and love must be let before learning can occur. Sexual abuse, physical abuse, and emotional maltreatment each affect a child's development in various ways. More learning and supports are needed if sexual abuse is a part of your child's story. If your child has experienced physical abuse, they may be afraid to take risks for fear of doing something wrong. They may have also sustained serious injuries that may affect some ongoing development. Emotional maltreatment erodes a child's self-esteem to the point of feeling incompetent of outside relationships, which may result in poor social development, lack of social skills, and difficulty with peers. We're getting there. When it comes to emotion, regardless of how our kiddos come to us, they're going to have feelings about it, and they're going to look to us as to how to model, how to accept, and how to process those feelings. So we need to get good at that ourselves. Allow grief. They're going to be sad. We need to allow them to be sad. There will be so much for them to grieve. They're losing so much. They're losing their culture. They're losing their humans. They're losing their home, their country, their language, like so much, their food. Let them cry until all of their tears are out. Tears actually have a chemical in them that actually help us process this grief. It's good for us. Scientifically, biologically good for us to cry. Even though you'll be tempted, don't try to make jokes. Don't try to get them to smile until they are ready for that. Don't try to make them happy. Let them know that you are a safe place for them to feel their hard feelings. It's really important. It is important to allow a loving, kind, non-judgmental space for these moments when they arise. A child's reaction to grief and loss is likely to be their go-to reaction throughout their life.